brought to you by Squarespace. I don't think it's a hot take to say that Dying Light is one of the most atmospheric, well-designed, and downright terrifying open-world zombie games ever made, which is something I would never have expected myself to say, based on the game's whole selling point being, what if Mirror's Edge had zombies in it? Yet every time I boot it up and hear that opening theme, I get hit with a wave of nostalgia and know I'm in for a good time, free-running across the slums of Haran and drop-kicking zombies into a completely different reality. Dying Light at this point is seen as kind of a cult classic. It's recently hit 10 years old, which makes me feel like a corpse, but despite its age, it still holds up incredibly well by today's standards. Well, mostly. Still, when the game was announced, I think a lot of people wrote it off as another dumb zombie game to throw on top of a very large pile of dumb zombie games. I mean, it was the early 2010s after all. No one expected this game to be a success when the market was already so oversaturated. Yet here I am, an old man, talking about why Dying Light stands head and shoulders above so many other games, and why it still gives me crippling anxiety whenever I hear that fucking alarm. Anyway, who wants to play Dead Island? Dead Island was a zombie game which came out in 2011, and that's pretty much all I know about it because I've never actually played the game. To be fair though, I do remember it having, quite possibly, one of the best trailers I've ever seen, slowly following a little girl as we watch her entire family turn into a light snack. It was also played mostly in reverse, for artistic purposes I suppose. The trailer was genuinely emotional, showing a level of humanity that most zombie games kind of forget about entirely. I mean, just seeing the smile on this father's face as he realizes his daughter is alive at the end of the trailer is like a knife straight through the heart, because we all know this slight moment of happiness ends like this. So of course the actual game was nothing like the trailers, forgetting all about that emotional stuff in favour of being a goofy, albeit fun, zombie game. Anyway, the whole reason I'm bringing up Dead Island is so that I can nicely segue into talking about the game's developer, a Polish company known as Techland. See, prior to making Dead Island, Techland was mostly known for the Call of Juarez series, which before I looked more into it, I thought it was just a Call of Duty ripoff with the Breaking Bad Mexico filter slapped on it. But after dipping their toes into the zombie genre, and seeing how successful Dead Island was, Techland knew they had something they could build upon. So the team looked to Dead Island and asked themselves, what could they add in order to improve the game? Now, with this being the early 2010s, parkour was at the absolute peak of its popularity, and Techland's seen the free-running style as a great way to add in a dynamic movement system.
Okay, we are cooked.
Plus, Mirror's Edge had only came out a few years earlier, and was hugely successful with its own parkour system, so obviously adding in zombies was going to be a guaranteed way to print money. Unfortunately though, Dead Island's publisher, Deep Silver, didn't really see it that way, and were against the next Dead Island having such a strong focus on parkour. However, instead of just scrapping the idea entirely, Techland decided to create a brand new project with parkour being an integral part of it, along with wanting to create a AAA game with a much more serious tone in comparison to Dead Island. So with all that in mind, the team got to work creating their new project, which admittedly seemed to be a little bit more tricky than first thought, as Techland had a bit of an issue really nailing the parkour. Like, they built a whole movement system that would scan climbable objects within the world and determine which animation would be appropriate for the game to use. But this resulted in a ton of glitches, like players no-clipping through walls. Don't worry though, they invited parkour pioneer David Bell to help make sure these animations all stayed realistic. Eventually though, the team got the hang of the parkour system, and in 2013 we would finally see what all that work had been leading to, as Techland dropped the first official trailer for Dying Light. But first, can anyone tell me what goes inside the circle hole? That's right, a square. This video was brought to you by Squarespace. Now send in the templates. Squarespace makes websites, lots of them. Need one to showcase your art? Want one to sell your merch? Just want a way to make money? Well then look no further, my friend. Squarespace is here. Just go to the site, be amazed by the wide array of templates. Click Blueprint AI, quickly answer some prompts, and within seconds, there it is, your beautiful new website. Look at these design tools. With all these at your fingertips, your website will be unstoppable. Especially with Squarespace's in-depth analytics, helping you see current trends, how many visitors you get, and the likelihood of my father coming back. Oh, come on, let's get serious. Squarespace, do you make websites?
Yes.
Go to Squarespace, get the free trial, prepare your website, and then use my link in the description or go to squarespace.com/AlexWebb to get 10% off your website or domain purchase. Now from this point, it would be another 2 years before Dying Light actually came out, landing the release date at the very start of 2015. Which wasn't exactly ideal. See, firstly, this is literally right after the festive periods, when everyone's bank account is fucking empty, and secondly, perhaps even worse for the game, this is when something called zombie fatigue really started to set in. By that, I mean that people really started to get sick of seeing zombies in almost everything. Games, TV shows, movies, your local Tesco, you couldn't even go on YouTube without seeing a plethora of zombie thumbnails. It was around this time when the subgenre's popularity really started to plummet, especially when it came to zombie related games, because it seemed like there was a new one coming out almost weekly, with the quality varying drastically from title to title. This obviously kinda handicapped Dying Light straight from the get-go, as I think many people just opted to either save their money or buy something else, like, what else came out during January 2015? Oh, clearly nothing good.
She gave great head.
But for those of you who decided to take a chance on this new zombie IP, you were gifted with, honestly, one of the best zombie games ever made. Now the real Alex Webb OGs will know that I actually did a video on Dying Light like 5 years ago, which has since been unlisted because I can't lie, it's not very good.
Oh, what the fuck?
But for some reason, if you want to watch it, give me money on Patreon. In saying that though, I do think my main sentiment in that video has stayed more or less the same, with that being that Dying Light is pretty fucking great and deserves all its flowers. Firstly, the game is set within the fictional country of Haran, which is under quarantine because, you know, zombies. The first half of the game takes place within the slums, and the second half in the more affluent area of Old Town, both of which offering an insanely densely packed environment for you to explore, while trying your best to not end up in a wheelchair. Something which always amazes me every time I boot Dying Light back up is the absurd level of detail put into every inch of the game's open world. Abandoned cars pile up all over the streets, there's graffiti littered across the slums showing a level of political unrest, and hastily put together traps can be found fucking everywhere, which definitely come in handy. It would have been so easy for Techland to put minimal effort into the open world and just put all the focus on the parkour aspects, but they said fuck that and gave us an incredibly rich open world instead, absolutely dripping in atmosphere. Like, just go inside any building you come across and you'll quickly see just how much detail has been crammed into these interiors, really encouraging exploration, as you can find all sorts of different shit from materials you can use for crafting, or just a spare protein bar in the fridge. The atmosphere is also utterly unmatched. Dying Light can evoke a level of terror in me that no other horror game can, simply from trying to pick a lock. Haran is a city which just has unlimited aura, and tells a clear story for its environments. The slums feel dirty and unkept, almost like they're about to fall apart any second, with so many dust particles floating around that I need to stop and take my inhaler. Whereas in contrast, Old Town is a place you'd probably visit on holiday.
Nothing beats a Jet2 holiday.
A highly wealthy area that hasn't seen the years of neglect the slums have endured, filled with hotels, beautiful architecture, and luxury apartments that are definitely out of my price range. Dying Light doesn't just have vibes though, it has some of the most addictive gameplay I've ever experienced, instantly giving me a much needed supply of dopamine. Seriously, what hasn't been said about Dying Light's gameplay loop already? It is the perfect mix of parkour and brutal violence, with both having a level of progression that actually makes me want to continue playing so I can unlock a new skill that'll absolutely make the game even more fun.
How long do concussions last?
Like, sure, at the very start the parkour is definitely good, but you can't tell me it isn't drastically improved the second you get your hands on that grappling hook and start acting like you're Spider-Man. That rule also applies to the combat, mostly for letting you decapitate anyone with a fucking curb stomp. The parkour specifically has aged like a fine wine, as you navigate around Haran having to make split-second reactionary decisions that may or may not pan out well. And it only gets better the more time you sink into the game. I mean, by the 40-hour mark, you're essentially John Wick with a whole array of very sharp sticks. Speaking of which, I'd honestly make the argument that the combat, or more accurately, the melee combat, is even more satisfying than the parkour. And to further prove my point, Any questions? What I think makes the combat especially memorable is from just how many different things you can use to cave in someone's skull. Hammers, sickles, cricket bats, baseball bats, machetes. The sheer volume of objects you can use to inflict mild brain trauma is honestly pretty impressive. And that's not even mentioning the throwable stuff. Every weapon can also be majorly improved by you crafting different upgrades, basically allowing you to take something like a regular axe and make it conduct electricity. Truly an engineering marvel. Now sure, of course there are some downsides to the combat, mainly that fighting actual live humans is kinda shit, and that guns are only really useful for quickly getting rid of bigger zombies like these guys called... Oh, that is a very unfortunate name. But with that being said, I do think the game makes up for it by having small details that I utterly adore. Like how other humans will freeze the second you pull out a gun, and how recently turned runners will still have a sense of humanity to them, actually backing off during combat and even asking you to stop.
Don't do it!
Ultimately, the gameplay of Dying Light is by far its best feature, embracing more wacky physics with some incredibly visceral combat to give you an insanely fun experience. That is until you check your alarm, realise it's nighttime, and accept the fact that you're cooked. Basically, see all that stuff I just listed? Yeah, fucking scrap it, because Dying Light becomes an entirely different game once the sun sets, and you realise these are the types of zombies you've got to deal with. Night is fucking terrifying, and if you actively choose to play the game during nighttime, you are a complete psychopath. See, during the daytime, you have an inherent level of safety when you mess up a jump, but night takes that all away, meaning even the most minor of mistakes will cause you to have a fucking panic attack. The difference between nighttime and daytime is stunningly apparent, and no, not just because one's dark. Like, while daytime can still be scary, especially when a viral decides to jump you, I'm fast as fuck, boy, it is nothing compared to the level of stress and tension you feel just wandering around at night. It legitimately transforms Dying Light from a fairly standard zombie game to an absolute nightmarish experience that makes me want to order several nightlights. Now at this point, Dying Light probably sounds like the perfect game to anyone who hasn't played it. A detailed open world, great gameplay, and an incredible day-night cycle. It's just a shame that Dying Light also has a story, which is, not great. Honestly, I've neglected to mention it for a reason, as it's the main criticism everyone brings up for the game. And, I won't try to convince you any differently, that script was pulled straight from the trash. It's a story that tries to take itself way too seriously when the game mostly revolves around either goofy moments like this, or, pure horror. The story and main cast of characters just aren't written strongly enough for me to feel any sort of investment in them. Like, come on, the main villain, Rice, is essentially just Vass from Far Cry 3.
Fuck you!
Although, with that being said, do I care that the story is mid? No, because look at the fucking gameplay. I was absolutely not expecting an Oscar-worthy story upon purchasing the parkour zombie game. I was expecting an exceptionally fun experience, and that's what I got. Dying Light at its core is a pretty goofy game, and it embraces that for its gameplay and the various side missions you do, like helping this man celebrate Mother's Day with his rather beautiful mother. The side activities actually turned into a real highlight of the game for me upon replaying it. Like, while I think the main story struggles to balance both the serious and goofy tones, the side content not only revels in Dying Light's inherent goofiness, but also manages to subtly convey the true horror of what's happening around you, and the effect it has on the people still trapped in Haran. Obviously, Dying Light isn't a perfect game, however, it is a game I find myself constantly revisiting, and I'm clearly not the only one. Like, if I were stuck on a desert island and somehow had access to a PC, I know what I'm playing. Honestly though, Dying Light is a game that I'll never get sick of replaying. Sure, the story may not be great, but it just feels so good to play that I'll absolutely never get bored of it. I mean, even just hearing the game's soundtrack brings a tear to my eye. The game also sold incredibly well for a new IP, selling over 5 million copies, and since its release, it spawned 2 sequel games, with the most recent title, Dying Light the Beast, receiving pretty great reviews. However, I haven't played it yet because, well, I've been editing this fucking video. Dying Light is a game that sparked new life into the zombie genre, and for many it has become the standard bearer for these types of games. It's fun, atmospheric, and downright terrifying at points, and it deserves all the praise it gets, because despite it being listed as a 7 out of 10, I 100% believe it is one of the best zombie games ever made.
Save these people.
Leave me like this crank. Prove you are a man. Take your vengeance.
You just shut the fuck up!